and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be talking to you guys about all the books I finished in the month of May. Now, as you guys know, I did do a TBR for May. If you haven't checked that out, I will leave that in the description box down below. I managed to read most of the books that were on my TBR, although there was 3 I didn't read. There were 2 of them I didn't finish but had started, and one of them I swapped out for another book because of me not looking at the back and ordering a book I wasn't enjoying. So I will kind of explain to you guys when I get to those books what books those are. I read a total of 10 books this month, so I'm pretty happy with that result, and didn't end up reading the last 2 on my list for shipping reasons, and also the books being a lot bigger than expected and not having much time to finish them because of the shipping reasons. I'm actually really happy with the books I read this month because they were some really enjoyable reads and I really enjoyed them, so I can't wait to share my thoughts on these books. So with that said, let's just get straight into the video. The first 2 books I want to talk to you guys about, and the first ones I completed this month, are ones that are part of a trilogy. So I actually ended up finishing this trilogy finally, which I was super excited and super happy about because I really enjoyed these 2 books as much as the first one, and these books being The Heart Forger and The Shattered Heart Glass by Chritina. This one is the Bone Witch trilogy, which I have been meaning to complete for several years now and have never got around to it, but then decided to actually put my mind to this trilogy and just restart it and read it in its entirety. I really enjoyed these 2 books of the trilogy. I thought they were absolutely phenomenally done, as well as the first one. The ending is definitely left me shattered and heartbroken, but I thought it was a beautiful ending to such a dark world and trilogy. The culture that is embedded in this series really stands it apart to other books and fantasy worlds that I have read, and it just made it more immersive world to me. I really enjoyed the character of T, although I didn't seem to connect to as many of the other characters as I usually do in a trilogy. I still quite enjoyed those characters, but I didn't invest as much love for those characters as I did for the main character of T, because I thought she was just awesome. I loved her character so much. The romance in this one was also another thing that I was not 100% rooting for, but I did think it was a very cute romance, and the trope is one of my favourite tropes of romance that I found that I like in some cases not so much, but it worked really well in this series, and I absolutely loved the magic system in this trilogy. I think it is so unique and so original. I've never seen anything quite like the magic system in this world. It was really interesting, and as well as that, the political elements in this series and conspiracy, I will say, is a really unique aspect to it, and the consequences of actions of people was a huge part of it. I just love the darkness of this series as well. It really pulled me in, and it was a really easy read. It wasn't too complicated that I wouldn't understand what is going on, so I absolutely really loved this trilogy. I'm so glad I finally got around to reading it, and I'm definitely going to read more of her works in the future. I just think she has a very unique take on fantasy, so I think I will definitely pick up some more of her fantasy books because it really felt like an immersive experience when I was reading this trilogy, so I definitely want to see what else she can do. I've just realised I have not explained to you guys what this series is about. So it basically follows this character named T, who is a bone witch or a necromancer, which is a more well-known word for the kind of magic she does, although that only basically touches on some of the magic she does. There's a lot more that she does that isn't just necromancy. It follows her as she comes to terms with her powers when she finds out she's a bone witch and is taken to the Ashika for training. It follows her journey in learning about her magic, and it also is told from two perspectives, her in the past when she is younger, and in the future as she is telling the story to a bard or a storyteller, and it's from his point of view. I thought the way that she divides the points of view was a really interesting way to do it, and it really kept you on your toes, and you just wanted to know how she gets to the point she is when she's being told from the future. And it's just a really interesting way to tell this unique story, and I loved following along with T's journey the whole way through, and it definitely has some very interesting plot points and twists that you wouldn't normally expect, and I absolutely loved it. The next book I picked up was one that was part of the duology that I had read the first one last month, and that is Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. This is the second book in the duology of the Strangest Dreamer duology. I thought this series is just beautifully written. I absolutely love the writing of Laini Taylor in this series. I think it's such an incredible and interesting concept that she has and lessons she has in this series. It was very interesting to see the take on some of these characters and the actions that they've made, and how you are subtly made to feel about these characters. I thought that was absolutely phenomenally executed. It was very beautifully done. The story was absolutely beautiful, and it was heartbreaking, and it had all the elements of a fantasy that I really liked. It definitely had the consequences of actions being brought to full circle, and I really enjoyed the main characters. Although the romance of this story wasn't something I could really get behind as much as I would have liked, because it was very insta-love, and I'm not a fan of insta-love. It's not one of the things I really enjoy. There are a few exceptions, like City of Bones. That series, like Clary and Jace, that is definitely an insta-love story that I absolutely love reading about. But this one, I did quite like. I did enjoy the romance, but it wasn't something I could really get behind, because it was very insta-love, and I had that 4 point on my mind the whole time, and it just felt a little bit not for me. But I still really enjoyed the other elements of the story, and I did enjoy the romance, but as I said, just couldn't get behind it completely. And I definitely was really intrigued with the whole range of characters that you were presented with in this story, and the way that they are shown, and never really having a villain was really interesting. At least that was my take on this duology. You didn't really fully have a villain that you could fight and see. There was just, these characters were so complex and flawed, and just had so many elements to them that I just loved reading about. I thought that was so interesting to see these flawed characters and how they're going to sort out these issues that they have, and I absolutely loved it. This duology basically follows this character named Laszlo Strange, who is a junior librarian and has had this obsession with this lost city of Weep. No, everyone else believes it is just a fairy tale, but Laszlo believes it is a real place, and he really wants to find it and explore it basically, and learn all about it. He is presented with this opportunity to discover the secrets of this city that may or may not exist, when some outsiders come to his town and need these people's help, and he ends up going with them. It is a really interesting magic system. I think the magic is really interesting. It is not one of the most complex magic systems, but it is still interesting to come to terms with the powers that are possessed in this world, and it's just very unique for each person, which I really liked as well. And I think more people should definitely read this series. I'm really excited and glad I finally picked it up. The next book I picked up is one I actually ended up swapping out for the other book, which was The Massive, because I didn't actually read the back of that book. For some reason, I don't know why I did that, but I didn't actually read the back of it, and it wasn't a story I'm interested in. So it's nothing against that graphic novel. It's just, it's not my style of writing, and I don't know why I bought it, but I did. So I ended up DNFing it in like 2 pages because I was bored. But that's nothing against the actual story, because for people who enjoy that type of story, it looked like it could have been a very good story. But I ended up swapping it with Coral by Sara Ella. I did originally have this on my bookshelf and wanted to read this for quite a while actually. I bought it back when I was doing my Our Readathon, and I don't know why, I just bought it because I was buying books, and I knew it had something to do with mermaids. That's all I knew when I first bought it, and I was really intrigued just because I've never really seen many mermaid stories, so I was like, could be interesting. I didn't know that it had a lot of mental health representation in this book, and I loved it. I thought the representation in this book is awesome. But before I go into more detail about that, I'm just going to go through the triggers, and I don't want to get them wrong, so I've got them in the book. Sara Ella actually puts a trigger warning at the start of this book, which I have never seen and thought was just a fantastic idea. The trigger warning note she has written, I'm going to put up on the screen because it actually made me quite emotional about what she had said, and it obviously is from her experience that she's written this, and I absolutely love this. It made me just fall in love with this book even more. So the triggers that she has written is suicide, self-harm, emotional abuse, anxiety, depression, eating disorders, PTSD, and unwanted advances. So those are all the trigger warnings for this book. There's quite a few in there. It is a book that centers around suicide, so please be aware of that if you're going to pick this up. So this book follows three characters, Brooke, Coral, and Merrick. Coral is a mermaid who lives under the sea, who ends up coming above the sea and is dealing with her sister being taken by the red tide. Brooke is a character who is suffering from depression and anxiety, and it's about her coming to terms with that. And it also deals with Merrick, who is the brother of his sister, who is dealing with self-harm and depression. It follows these characters as they come to terms with their mental health. I think the way that mental health was represented in this book was absolutely phenomenal. I could really see Sara Ellis's understanding throughout the book, as well as her research that has gone into this, because it is absolutely phenomenally represented, and I could definitely hear my own voices in some of these instances, and I really think that anyone who suffers from these disorders will absolutely see themselves in this. But please be aware, because it is really raw and authentic, so it is her own voices in a lot of the ways, because she does explain that she has suffered from some of these things that are represented in this book, but it is her own experiences. So it is not condoned to one person. This is not how one person is suffering. It is just her own experience and her own voice. So it is very, very raw and authentic, and I really felt that as I was reading it, and it definitely has this absolutely heartbreaking tone throughout this whole story, because it really does center around these mental health that is represented. And I think it is absolutely a phenomenal book. I am so glad I picked it up. I did not realize it was about mental health when I did pick it up, but it was a good surprise because I like reading about those sorts of things. I really do think it is a very educational book in the way that the voices are portrayed, and I'm loving it. So I'm definitely wanting to pick up some more of hers. I could guess some of the ending, but not all of it. So the plot twist at the end definitely had me heartbroken, as the nature of the book is. But I think this story and the connection between the characters and the relationships that they are developed in this story was absolutely phenomenally executed and written so beautifully, and you could definitely see that as a realistic connection, and it really, really made these characters more authentic and real to me. So I really enjoyed that about this book. The next three books I want to talk to you guys about are the ones I read for my romance reading vlog. The first one being The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang. This one follows this main character named Stella, who is an autistic main character who is very, very good at mathematics and her job, when she decides to basically hire a male escort to get better at relationships. And then things go from there. I kind of enjoyed it. Like, it was an okay read for me. But I think the main reason I didn't like it is because it was a very steamy romance, and I generally don't like those. I prefer to have in-depth connections and relationships. I just felt this one didn't have that one for me. It was a very interesting read. I did like reading Stella's point of view because that was really interesting, because I haven't read many autistic characters, unfortunately. I just haven't picked up many books with an autistic character. I think the only other one is in the Dark Artifices, but it's not really from his point of view. So I haven't actually read a lot of autistic representation. I can't speak for the representation, not being autistic myself, so if this has great autistic representation, please let me know. I can't comment on that because as I said, I'm not autistic. It was an okay read. The romance was really cute, but I don't know what it was. I just was too steamy for me, with not just being the entire focus of the novel, obviously being a romance novel, and I just didn't really enjoy the romance as much as the other two that I read in this vlog. I did quite enjoy the other two, so I will talk about those ones, but this one was just too much for me. So it was an okay read and it was a good book, but the romance was just too intense and too much for me. The next one I read was Red, White and Royal Blue. This one is about an enemies to lovers romance. It follows the Prince of England and Alex, the first son of the president. At first don't get along, and because of an incident that happens at a wedding, they have to pretend to be friends. And things kind of go from there. I really enjoyed this one. I thought this was a really cute romance. I really loved them together. I thought they were very, very cute. I definitely liked the other characters in this book as well, which was something I didn't really get from the Kiss Quotient. I really liked the side characters in this as well, not just the main characters, which was something I didn't really get from the Kiss Quotient. So I loved them, and I also loved the main characters, which is probably why I liked this one a little bit more, and I just thought they were just the perfect couple. They were so cute. The last one of my romance ones is Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Chritina Lauren. This one follows these two characters named Josh and Hazel who keep setting each other up on blind dates. That is basically the premise of the story. I loved this one. This one was just phenomenal. I think this one was definitely my favorite. I just loved how it started as friends and they really had this amazing relationship with each other, with all this banter and understanding of each other's wild tendencies. But I also loved the characters. I loved Hazel, especially Hazel, because she is just a wild character. I've never read a character quite like Hazel, and I just thought she was hilarious and serious and just so funny to read about. She was so fun to read about, and I think that's what made me love this book so much, is because of her character. But I also liked how they started up as friends and they developed that relationship obviously eventually, and I loved how it ended. It was really cute. It was a really cute romance that I like to read about, and because of that I think I will pick up more of Chritina Lauren romances and possibly more of Casey McQuiston, because I think these ones are really good. But this one's definitely got to be a surprise read, because this was the one I was expecting to like the least, but it's the one I like the most out of the three. So the way things work. The last two books I want to talk to you guys about are the ones from the same series, and that is the Trials of Apollo series. As you guys know, I'm slowly making my way through this universe and reading them all. I'm currently up to book 4. So book 4, and then I just got to wait for September for the last one of this series to come out. So I read book number 2 and 3, being the Dark Prophecy and the Burning Maze. I can't really go into too much detail about these books, but I think I liked the Burning Maze the most so far. This is my favorite of the series so far. These ones, I really enjoy how Riordan introduces the old characters into these stories and weaves them in ingenious ways. This one definitely had my heart breaking into pieces for a reason I cannot say because of the spoilers. But for you guys who don't know what this series is about, it follows this character named Apollo, who is a god. But he ends up down on Earth being mortal because of Zeus, and he has to go through these trials to get back his godliness, I guess. And he is stuck with this demigod named Meg. I wasn't sure about Meg in the first book, but after reading the second and third one, I have come to really appreciate her and love her for her unique personality. I really enjoy her. I think she's such a unique character in this series. Definitely haven't seen anything like it in the previous series, and she's definitely a really interesting character to read about, and definitely fits really well with Apollo. The friendship that develops between these characters is awesome as well. It's quite funny to read about, and I'm really intrigued to see where the rest of this series is going to go and how it's going to end. I cannot wait. Alright guys, that is it for all the books I read in the month of May. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys have read any of these books and what your thoughts are. I'm really happy with the 10 books I read this month. Only about a couple of them I was a little bit under what I was expecting, but that's okay. As always, I will leave all my social media in the description box down below, as well as this month's TBR, so you can check that out as well. Until next time guys, see ya!